Shadid is just has such an interesting background. He's going to be talking to you about licensure, but it's really interesting, when you look at how he came in and developed this expertise. He is a Maryland-based U.S. Navy veteran and content licensing strategist who created a business model that was licensed by 17 U.S. states and utilized by the government reelection campaigns in $1 million exclusive licensing agreement. Experts and entrepreneurs hire Shadid's team to help them convert their intellectual property into a license-ready curriculum that is sold to corporations, universities, and government agencies. This increases recurring revenue for the business and solves the problem of the time for money exchange for his clients. Shadid is a graduate of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, an amazing program, and he's a certified score master or score mentor. So with that, I would like to bring on camera Shadid Elazar. Hey, Shadid, how are you?
Once again, hello, Dr. Dumont. It's
an
honor, privilege, and pleasure to share this time and space with you and your audience.
I appreciate that so much. And Shadid, I wonder if you could just delve a little bit more into your background. I know the story of how you came into this particular specialization. Started way back with your military experience. Could you?
If we go way into the way back machine, and common reference point that we all know would be 9/11. So once upon a time, I was stationed on an aircraft carrier that was a part of the first responder unit for the 9/11 attacks. I was just stationed all the way over in Japan. And so during that time, so I want you to picture your desk where you may be viewing this for the viewer. So think about maybe your stapler, your printer, your computer, your laptop, all the cables and cords. So on a Navy ship, each piece of equipment has to go through a readiness check in order for that work center to be certified. Now, the problem that we ran into was that we were in an emergency situation, and our readiness was the tools that we used to manage that readiness were non-existent. It was literally a sheet of paper on a clipboard on a wall. So there was no software. There was nothing to help us manage it effectively. So the powers that be in Washington, D.C. Granted us funding for a software package in order to help us manage our equipment. And so the problem is no one knew how to use it. And so I took the initiative to, we typically work 12 to 15-hour days out to sea. And after that time, I took the initiative to learn this software. Now, here's where licensing comes into it. So from learning the software, that wasn't enough. I created a model to train the trainer. So each battle group, there's a total of, let's say, 9 different departments within our overall battle group. So I'm part of the 1st division. And when our numbers started to go up in terms of readiness, the managers of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, they said, well, why is the 1st division's numbers going up? What are they doing at work? So the supervisors within the department gave me the permission, because it is the military, to teach or train the trainers of each department or each division so that their readiness scores went up. And so that was my first example of license. I actually earned a Navy Achievement Medal during the time of war for that effort, because I took an idea, I packaged it, and then I loaned out that idea to help other departments and help their readiness scores go up. And that was my first example of licensing that has gone on year after year after year, and used this strategy and approach time and time again, whether it's government contracts, large, let's say, deployments, official state websites, as you mentioned, let's say a software licensing example that was licensed starting with the state of Maryland to 17 other U.S. states and commonwealths. And if I was to sit down with you and walk through, let's say, official state websites, you would notice that many of them are similar because of the licensing deal that was put in place not to change certain elements of those state websites because
Mhm.
they were deemed as effective or a part of an overall software package. So in this session, we'll walk through some of those adventures and target it to authors and those who want to use their knowledge in order to build through license.
Okay. Yeah. So bring us up to date now, Shadid, and tell us, a little bit more about, what you do for clients and how that comes about.
Well, it's very simple. If you're in business, the great Imana guy was once quoted as saying, "The biggest mistake you can make in business is to not make money every day." So if
Yes.
we're not in the charity industry, and so you have to be profitable in some way, shape, or form. But what most people miss out on is customer lifetime value, or in plain English, the art and science and process of transitioning a one-time customer into a repeating customer that's also a champion of your product, in some cases a partner, and just the value of that lifetime relationship. So when you talk about, let's say, building a business online, there's no difference these days between offline and online. There's an online, let's say, reputation and relationship that your customers have. And so what is the most effective way to build that relationship? I
Mhm.
believe that an educated customer is helps to improve the profitability of any business. So the more that you educate them, and many businesses have a tug of war that they have with, if I give away the recipe or the secret sauce,
Mm.
then will I still be needed? And the answer is absolutely. So
Yeah.
what I do for organizations is to help them build the educational center around, or the university around, their products, services, and service delivery, so that when someone buys from them, they're able to monetize that transaction again and again, because you're now giving them the tools to fish for themselves, as opposed to coming back to you again and again to get that recipe. So licensing is a byproduct of education, but it all starts with building that educational center to enrich the lives of either employees, customers, students, whatever, let's say, group of people you're seeking to serve.
I think we're frozen up just a little bit. We'll give it a. Oh no, Shadi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. For some reason, it froze up for just a second. So I'm sorry about that. If somebody wanted to do this, and approach a university or an organization about this kind of, this kind of licensing, how easy is it for somebody to do that, and how do you lay that path, or create that path forward?
Well, let's use an analogy. If I was to say to one of the viewers, let's say the viewer's name is John. So, hello, John, out there. If I was to say to John, your goal is 10 feet in the air. Can you jump 10 feet in the air to reach it? The answer would be no.
Yeah.
So you would need a ladder in order to reach that 10-foot goal. So the simple answer is, if you understood licensing, then yes, it is 10 times easier. That's where ladders such as myself come into play, where I've built these relationships over time. So when creating content, I don't, let's say, go based on what I feel would be valuable, but I go to, let's say, the media buyers within corporations, agencies, and
Hmm.
universities, find out their requirements, and then create. But let's say for someone who is viewing John, for example, they may not have the understanding of the nuances of licensing. So they do need a ladder. So here's the first ladder that I'm going to give you. It has nothing to do with licensing. Is the first lesson, but it is the first lesson of licensing, which is licensing partnerships are a byproduct of exceptional customer service delivered. So if you are in the customer service business, which we all are, we all work for someone or for some entity or something. And so you start with exceptional customer service, meaning most licensing conversations start from referrals. So within a university, within a corporation, within any type of company, there tends to be meetings. And within those meetings, what tends to happen is a need is expressed. So our customers need, let's say, LinkedIn training, for example, or our customers need personal branding
Mhm.
advice or guidance. And so what happens is the people that are within your Facebook communities, that are within your customer and client list, they have to go to work somewhere. That may be a company, university, agency, and they tend to say, well, John has a great program that I've taken last year, and it helped me achieve A, B, and C. And that's where licensing tends to start. And so the first thing I would recommend is to make licensing available within your particular audience. Announce that you have, let's say, corporate training available.
Mhm.
And so that would be a practical place to start. Your newsletter, your website are always places that I recommend that you announce corporate training and let the power of referrals drive you to corporate conversation.
All right, all right, that makes sense. And you know, I know that people must have a lot of questions about you know, what should you look out for? You know, if you are on the provider side, you know, and what should you look out for in terms of creating that licensing contract? You know, so that it doesn't get either hijacked or misused in some way. It's not getting the best use.
Well, let's dive into some of the mechanics of the licensing agreement, and we'll answer that question along the way because it is important. Number one, the benefit of licensing over most type of, let's say, service delivery partnerships and agreements is that you, as the licensor, the person who is the owner of the intellectual property, have the power to grant permission to use what you're giving to that organization. Meaning, one thing you should always pay attention to is the length of the agreement. There is no such licensing agreement as forever, meaning you have access to this content forever. Another would be, do you want for the licensee, the person who is purchasing the access to this intellectual property, to have it exclusively, or is it non-exclusive? So with a non-exclusive licensing agreement, what you're saying is, I'm giving you the recipe, but I'm also going to share the same recipe with other competitors and organizations. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly
Mhm.
fine. And one common example of a non-exclusive licensing agreement is you've all been to high school. Some of you have been to college, and the textbooks that are within your learning institutions are all licensed to the universities. Big surprise, the professor, your science professor, did not write the science book. It's a licensing agreement. So when we talk about exclusive versus non-exclusive, in an exclusive licensing agreement, the rate for that license should be higher because you're giving them full permission and access to that content or intellectual property. So you have the non-exclusive, you have the duration, you also have, let's say, reproduction rights, meaning if you don't want for your training course to be, let's say, the cover of the training course to be changed to the professor who may be teaching it, then you can state that this content cannot be changed or reproduced,
Mhm.
and the training itself is as is. And so if they want to make revisions again, that should be delivered at a higher rate. So when you focus on who, and also let's add in another condition. If you only want for certified trainers of your system or your process
Mhm.
to deliver that training, then you can also specify that within that particular course. And
And
so, yes.
would that be a point where they could oh shoot, where was I going? That would that be the a point where oh shoot, I'm sorry, should
Well,
you the
let me
question
try to read your mind here. And
went right?
so, when it comes to, let's say, certification programs, certified trainers, certification programs are a lucrative and common example of licensing that most people don't realize. And so, within that licensing agreement, you can have either A, in order for this licensing agreement to, let's say, execute, my certified trainers have to deliver this curriculum, or B, in order for this training to be executed, one of your members must go through the training program itself. So, those of you who are coaches, those of you who are authors, and let's say, especially in the business realm, or even let's say real estate and other industries, if you have a proprietary way of delivering results, then yes, you can have a certification program to indoctrinate licensees into your program. And yes, you have the full right, and I recommend that you charge for that opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, certification programs can be really lucrative. And so it sounds like that's kind of a 1-2 punch, that's combined. I had another question, Shadid, as you were talking. A lot of people are developing products, and I can think of, I'm in social media, so
Mhm.
I encounter this all the time. It's a constantly evolving, topic. And how do you create a product that's more evergreen,
Hmm.
in terms of that? Or are there times when that might incorporate, bringing in new developments, or, I'm not sure because I haven't done it, but I'm asking you.
Well, the beauty of licensing models is that you, as the owner of the intellectual property, can utilize a version model to, or volume model, in order
Mhm.
to maintain updates to the content. Similar to publishing on, let's say, Amazon Kindle, if there's an update that you need to make, you can edit and then republish. But with, let's say, a course or curriculum, especially, let's use social media, for example. So when there is a new version of LinkedIn, or there's new features that are added in, and it makes the training that you've already released obsolete or outdated, you can publish a new version.
Mm.
And similar to when a college has a algebra textbook that, let's
Mm.
say, in freshman year, it may be version 1, and then maybe by junior year, it's version 2. And so you can publish and then release the new version. The beauty of it is that you can also charge for access to newer versions, because if a certain feature is a hot topic, then naturally licensees will want to have access to it.
Mhm.
So you can adjust your pricing based on updates, or let's say new modules that are added, if it's a training course or online course that you're choosing to license.
Yeah, that's really important. I thank you for explaining that. I think it can be kind of mysterious for some of us, as to how you actually navigate these waters, and that's where your expertise comes in. Could you talk a little bit about, perhaps one situation where, or one client who was just starting out with this, and what the journey kind of looked like in terms of getting them on board and into that licensure agreement?
Well, when we talk about just starting out,
Mm.
in many cases, there's the journey of mastery that needs to take place. Meaning, most people who succeed with licensing, it's not that they're starting with licensing. That's not the important part.
Mm.
It's refining and developing that book, that course, that training methodology to where they have something that works.
Mhm.
You're someone, let's say, who is experienced with licensing, such as myself. I'm going to go directly to the source. Let's say someone who is looking to purchase a license, and then I can build from there. But for someone who is on the opposite end and doesn't have those licensing relationships, they tend to go through the path of mastery till they have a course that, let's say, gains traction. So
Okay.
now, once they've gained that traction and they have, let's say, a list, they have a program that is has, let's say, traction. Then, what tends to happen is the corporate training or the licensing tends to take place. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a real world scenario based on this. So, there's a lady. I'll leave her name out of it because she's doing. She's in the middle of some heavy licensing negotiations as we have this conversation. So she's based in Western Canada, and so Canada is one of my larger markets in terms of support, clients, traction. And so she had a marketing course that let's say retail for about 497. It was actually 497. And so she had, let's say, cohort style delivery where she would bring in anywhere from 10 to 15 people a few times a year, up to 3 times a year. It was doing well. Now, within one of those cohort, there was an individual who worked for a large agency. And so the person who was the client who worked at the large agency was the referral source for this licensing agreement. And so the conversation started. And so when I came into, she initiated the conversation up front. And so what we realized right away is that the program was vastly undervalued. And so one of the learning lessons from this is the beauty of working with agencies versus individuals is that they have set aside budgets to work with you. And so the pricing had to be adjusted to for agency level pricing, because if you go to a corporation and you say, well, my program is $97 or my program is $497 or $197, in many cases $997, they're going to view the program itself as suspicious. What is wrong with this program that it is valued at such a low rate when we have, let's say, a vast amount of employees to serve and support? How can you support an entire division with 997 US dollars?
Yeah.
And so that was one realization that we had to put forth. And so once we made some revisions in terms of how the program would be structured, she had a vision of delivering all the training herself. And the first thing I mentioned is that you can be the face of the program, but you don't necessarily need to be the hands or the physical labor and delivery of said program. So she hired, let's say, instructors to come in and deliver the module-based delivery of this marketing program. And this freed up her time. And what she was able to negotiate was a higher rate for her on-site time. So when she did come in and deliver, let's say, the keynote for it, it was a higher billing rate for those services. And let's say the graduation of that particular cohort. So overall, let's say pricing wise, the rate went from 497 to 49,000. And so with is an annual non-exclusive license. And so around 10 months out of the, but let's say if a year is 12 months, of course, around the 9 to 10 month mark, that's where renegotiation happens. And then there's a rate that's applied to purchase a new license. So what she was able to do with this is increase her revenue for training she's already delivered. She was able to partner with a larger agency and become a official content provider.
Great.
She was able to gain referrals from that conversation with that agency. And now she's working with other agencies and competitors. But due to the fact that it's non-exclusive. There's no non-compete clause that exists, and she's able to employ up to 4 to 5 instructors because now she has a program that is profitable and working for her, and so
Great.
now she's able to put other instructors in a winning position.
That's terrific. That's just a really clear example of the process that someone would go into and what makes it work. So it sounds like would you consider that almost an enterprise package because it's going to the institution and that's an organization. Am I putting that the right way? So in other words, the reason that there was such a price difference is because she's interacting with an institution rather than individuals in teaching this. She's licensing to the institution.
Well, I would say it wouldn't in this particular case because she was serving and supporting a large department. I would not consider it an enterprise licensing agreement. If it was a licensing agreement that spanned across the entire agency, for example, many software licensing agreements, I've done several of those that were enterprise where all employees were impacted or let's say transformed. And this was more of division or departmental. And again, when you're shifting from individuals to organizations, they have set aside budgets, they have funding, they have numerous ways to raise the funds needed to afford training, and training is a major part of their employee or student retention strategy.
Okay.
So you would almost be disqualifying yourself by pricing below what competitors price their training at. So the $997, $197, $97 that you typically see within coaching circles does not apply at the corporate level.
Okay, very, very interesting. And yes, coming out of higher ed myself, I recognize that there is a bias against something that's too cheap because it can't be worth anything if it's that cheap. So yeah, I understand that. And I work with a lot of coaches and I think that same thing applies there in terms of keeping their programs, whenever it's not, people don't want to be too expensive in competing, but they don't realize that if you're too low, that happens too. And I can remember when I first left higher education, I decided to do career coaching because that was my field at the time. And, I started out pricing myself at $50 an hour and couldn't understand why people weren't jumping on it. Well, they figured if you're only charging $50 an hour, what could you possibly know? One of the lessons that we recovering academics have to learn, so I really, that is really good advice. So Shadid, if someone wanted to connect with you and learn more about this, do you have, a preferred way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, in the spirit of this summit, the first thing I want you to do is to consume the corporate clients checklist. And so the corporate clients checklist will help you if you are a service-based professional, you're a knowledge-based professional, and you're looking to understand how to navigate the corporate waters. The corporate clients checklist is available through participation in this summit. So that's the first way that I want you to engage my work, because once you let's say you get started, there's numerous steps to take. And so an easy path is the self-education path. And so corporate clients checklist would be the first way. If you look up, let's say, my first name and last name on social media, or let's say do a search engine search, there's numerous videos and information that will show up, but corporate clients checklist will help you to achieve a targeted result.
Yeah, I mean that a checklist makes it so easy because you can follow those action steps that you need to take each way. Each way. Now, I don't think a checklist will completely gather all of your wisdom in this area. It's a good way to get started and understand how they approach it. And in fact, I've looked at your checklist and it's really amazing. If they're first starting out, if they've done the checklist, they realize what they know and what they don't know, because some of the things on that checklist I knew I didn't know. Where would they go from there?
Well, if they go through the checklist, they will have a clear understanding of where they are and where they want to be. And so from there, they can book a consultation session, and we can walk through putting a strategy in motion that would benefit, let's say, would be targeted towards a given result. So some deliverables that I provide are the intellectual property business plan, which does not exist. The lawyers don't write intellectual property business plan. Most business coaches don't have the legal background to do
Yeah.
so. And so when you're looking to build a business around your intellectual property or expand your professional personal brand to allow for your creations to lead for
Mhm.
you, that's where the intellectual property business plan tends to have the highest value.
Okay. Okay. That's really important. And you have your gift for VIPs is that partnership profits formula.
Mhm.
And I would really suggest to people, that if this is something you're interested, if you want to know more about licensing, that you get that VIP pass, for $47, because then you'll be able to watch Shadid again and take advantage of that offer. And I really want people to know that, because your VIP gift is really that partnership profits formula is really a fabulous gift.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for mentioning our mentor, Imana Guy. We have both studied with him, and you are absolutely right. The worst thing we can do as entrepreneurs is not to make money every day. And certainly, I think licensing is one of those areas that a lot of people aren't aware of that as a path to monetizing their intellectual property. And that is so important. So Shadid, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Our time's a little bit off, and so I wanted to extend. We've talked about your free gift, but I wanted to see if there are any questions that you normally get when people are asking you about this. Are there any questions that are frequent?
Well, when it comes to, let's say, licensing, and when it comes to intellectual property, whether someone is a author or a speaker, there's many questions that tend to come up. And so let's go down the author path for a bit. So when we talk about the advantages that self-published authors have when it
Yeah.
comes to licensing, so if you're an author, for example, and of course, you've written a book or audio book of some sort, ebook, doesn't matter the container that the book is published in, keep in mind that it's still one of the highest forms of credibility that exists. And so when it comes to advantages, you already have a form of content that can be reviewed by companies. And so when someone's looking to make a buying decision from a company, credibility, or someone who is employed by a company and looking to make a purchase, credibility is a huge bargaining chip in your favor. It's a huge form of leverage. So when you're a published author and you're looking to engage, especially if you're a best-selling author, this gives you a huge leg up on other competitors. And so you must leverage that. So you must make sure that sales from your book is mentioned within either your one sheet or your websites or your landing pages, also within your newsletters. Make sure you mention that you're an author. Secondly, when you have a published book, it's also valuable that in terms of repurposing your book into a
Mm,
curriculum, into a workbook, into a worksheet, and other forms of content that would be considered valuable by, let's say, a parent organization who is looking to purchase your license. And
okay.
so those are that is a very common question, because people want to understand what would be the is the view worth the climb when it comes
Mhm.
to uh, creating licensing. And I would also say, let's say, some of the what can go wrong when it comes to licensing.
That's a very good question too.
So most licensing conversations, once they start, tend to derail due to improper or infrequent follow-up. So at the time
Um,
of this conversation, we're in a holiday period. And so with holidays, people tend to take leave from who are working in companies,
mhm,
and sometimes the entrepreneur, the author, takes leave as well. And
mm,
so do not drop the ball when it comes to follow up. If you have questions, or you don't want to let questions go unanswered, and you want to also give employees and, let's say, companies the opportunity to make a decision. So ask the question, when would be an adequate time to follow up? If you don't
mm.
hear anything within the licensing discussion, it's okay to follow up, but don't follow up every day, and don't follow up 30 days from now if you're in the middle of a discussion. So improper follow up is one of the biggest challenges that derail any licensing partnership.
Absolutely. That's a great question and a great answer. Follow up seems to be the key to so many things for us as entrepreneurs. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you how many times I hear that. When you ask a client, well, did you follow up? And they're like, oh, I've heard it from salespeople.
Mhm.
I've heard it all the way down from marketers. I've heard it all the way down the line. That follow up is so important. So listen, everyone. Shadid has been extremely generous in his time and the information that he's given. I hope that you will follow up with his free gift. That checklist is just invaluable, and also he has a really great VIP gift. And if you have the app, Shadid will be featured in the app as one of our featured speakers. Thank you so much, Shadid, and I so appreciate your being here.
Thank
All
you.
right,
It was my pleasure.
thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.